Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Tank Encyclopedia. In this episode, we will be going to take an in-depth look at the development, use, and modernizations of the M-31 Cupid infantry tank. Our story begins in the heart of the Promethean Directive, at the Kordic Autonomous Empire located on the far right corner of the Durford Peninsula. After the massive industrialization of the KAE, they soon found themselves surrounded by local tribes and city-states that wished to conquer their lands. And in response, using their superior technology, they set out to design an infantry tank to protect the KAE troops. The KAEC, the Kordic Engineering Corps, sent out specifications to two companies, Kordic Manufacturing and Hellcat Design Co. The specifications required 4 meters of heavy armor and 1 of metal, a 200mm gun capable of penning 2 meters of armor at 5,000 meters, 2 coax 60mm machine guns, an efficient V8 engine, a 6-man crew, and a radio capable of maintaining contact with the capital at 5,000 kilometers. In 1003, the first prototype, known as XM2, ended up going nowhere due to the lack of armor, only being 2 meters of heavy armor thick and 1 of metal. An extremely unreliable suspension had eventually put it down for good after testing on the chassis. 8 months in and 2 prototypes later, the KAEC, still unhappy with all these submissions, decided to allow Kordic Manufacturing to produce 2 stopgap designs using existing guns and engines. Kordic Manufacturing in turn produced a limited run of EX-1L Quart and EX-2L Comstock tanks, named after CEO Comstock of Kordic Manufacturing. The EX-1L was armed with the standard 180mm PaK-10 anti-tank gun, modified to the PaK-11T tank gun. The Quart had 3 meters of heavy armor and 1.5 meters of metal. However, its main defense was the speed due to its KM88 V8 injection engine, which propelled the vehicle up to 55 meters per second. While a speedy cavalry tank, it was in no way what the KAEC was looking for. However, it was briefly adopted into service in 1005 until retired from training units in 1020, serving as a training tank for 12 of the 15 years. However, 20 of the 63 ordered still survive as museum pieces and in private collections. Peculiarly, 2 seem to have made it into the Verkan Defense Force, the military of one of the many independent city-states in the KAE territories. However, due to current Kordic-Verkan relations, photos are rather hard to come by. The EX-2L Comstock was by far the worst design to ever grace the Kordic military. The Comstock only had 1 meter of heavy armor and had a maximum of 3 meters of metal armor. And only sporting a 100mm PaK-3, an abundant yet obsolete anti-tank gun manufactured from 1000 to 1002, only penning 1 meter of armor point blank and .633 at 2000 meters, the tank was so dated by the time they were manufactured in 1004 that they ended up being used as reconnaissance and eventually given to police forces as entrenchment countering vehicles, or ECVs. Now known as the ECV-2M, it has been mildly successful in its new role. However, its X4 engine still proves a pain in the police force's side due to its unreliability. The KE once again sent out these specifications, however this time a new company would accept the contract, that being Scotty Engineering, a former tractor and construction equipment designer. Immediately they got to work churning out a soft steel hull in under 6 months and a fully armored hull in the next 2 to 3 months. The hull impressed the KEC with its reliable armor hitting specifications and reliable suspension. However, the engine used was a Gurkha 9 X8 injector engine, and while it produced over 8,000 horsepower, it was incredibly fuel-hungry, requiring exterior fuel tanks to extend the range of the prototype in order for it to continue its endurance trials. 2 months later, a fully armored turret arrived, made completely of heavy armor and incredibly angled along the sides, making it a hard target to hit at distance. Once installed, the XM1, as the prototype was now called, was almost ready to enter its final trials when a peculiar situation decided to pop up its head. The main gun, a planned 200mm anti-tank gun, was not proving to be reliable enough to enter service, so a stopgap 210mm Mark IV naval gun's barrel was installed to a 230mm howitzer breech, making the first squeeze-bore anti-tank gun of the KAA, and fixing the issue of firepower. However, later on, a dedicated 210mm gun was designed and would be applied onto the revamped M-31A1. After 4 years of trials and development, the new infantry tank of the KAA would be found in the M-31 Cupid cavalry tank. The final product was a reliable, if fuel-hungry, medium tank that helped in the conquest of the Durford Peninsula. In 1015, when the KAE made its first steps into the world stage, an order of 13 tanks in total was ordered by the neighboring coalition. In order to appeal more to the coalition, the Cupids, designated for export, were rearmed with a 254mm CG-1K multi-role gun firing heat rounds capable of punching through solid armor at any distance with mild inaccuracy. This would be the first export of the M-31 and was hugely successful, with the exported tanks training coalition troops for the next 10 plus years according to sources. The next major modification of the M-31 Cupid was the M-31A1, replacing the squeeze bore gun and adding an extra road wheel due to the stability problems found in the coalition reports. The M-31A1 also received add-on armor and a new machine gun developed in 1012. The M-31A1 was the most produced variant of the Cupid family, spawning a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun called the Hearth almost 20 years later. However, in 1017, another export was accepted, this time to the widely disliked Historian Empire. The tanks originally were M-31A1s, however the historians modified them into M-31A4Es, modifying the Kordic 210mm KML-10 into the L-14 high-velocity gun, adding more armor to the mantlet and adding more storage to the turret's exterior. They also added road wheels to the tracks, allowing for tighter grip to better perform the less sandy terrains of Sawallis. After a roof collapse on a warehouse containing M-31A1 Cupid infantry tanks that were put into reserves, a large amount of tanks had suffered damage to the upper front plate and transmission, and in order to get the tanks back up to reserve standards, the tanks were sent to a local foundry to be repaired. Due to the nature of this foundry, the tanks were given a cast upper front plate and transmissions sourced from abroad. However, at the end, the fixed tanks were given the new M32 designations and put back into storage. Years later, as the KAA was reorganizing, they found out about the accident and repair. Impressed by the strength of the cast armor, they called M32s into service as command vehicles, upgrading the M32s to the new M32C1 field command vehicle. Fitted with ECM equipment and a new radio, the M32C1s proved to be solid command vehicles in training exercises for years to come. Were the Cupids the best tanks for the jobs? Not by any shot. However, they jump-started the Kordic tank industry, allowing it to prosper and grow across many years, giving this tank an almost legendary status among. It remains the only tank in Kordic history to remain in service for over 20 years. Thanks for watching the Tank Encyclopedia. Now, please go to the real Tank Encyclopedia's website and YouTube channel, subscribe and go support them on a Patreon, and it allows them to make higher quality videos improving everyone's experience. Anyway, you'll have a cringy day, for cringy days are the best days. I'll talk to y'all later. Adios. Editing cringe here. I just want to say, yes, this is a joke video. I do not work for the Tank Encyclopedia, if it's not obvious by the fact I literally had to go and rip their freaking intro from a YouTube video about Hungarian tanks. And I literally just had this idea a while ago and I wanted to do it. And if you're still watching to this point, that means you're a nerd like me. Either that or you just zoned off while having this in the background, or you're Theo or Hellcat. Basically, I want to do this type of thing for different vehicles throughout the Promethean Directive, because I think that'd be fun. So, yeah. That's pretty much it. I already said the outro, so that's all you get. Bye-bye. Peculiarly? 3 years later, after the utter failure of the stopgap designs and no market to access to acquire more, the KAE once again sent out the specific